I was born actually in Newark, New Jersey, but I was raised here. But I don't know if I can say this on camera. I was born in a home like she was. No record of my birth. Can you believe it? I had no record of my birth. And I hate to say this, but I was such a studious young man, and I wanted to play sports. I remember going to my mother because she wasn't actually my mother. She was my stepmother. My mother died at 29 years old of alcohol poisoning. And I was raised by someone, never adopted. You talking about unconditional love. That's unconditional love, isn't it? And I was raised by her. And I didn't have a birth certificate. But I was smart enough or studious enough to know at the time you could go down and get a sheet of paper and fill it out and find somebody who was willing to say that they knew you and put their name and address on there. And I met my own birth certificate. Sorry, people. Matter of fact, I have it in my wallet now. And I met my own birth certificate. Yes, I did. So I could play sports. And I had someone to sign it from Fry's Alley. And I took it to the school. And they let me play sports. And I showed it to my mother. And she says, boy, you something else. That's all she said. You something else. You can't get away with this. And even now, I don't have a birth certificate. I still use that. And it's on. I know everyone is not right, but I had to show. Do you know I was told that I had no existence? You ever heard that? Sir, there's no record of your existence. Wow. But my ingenuity figured it out. Like I said, the Triangle District to me, I'll be honest with you, like I said, I was raised in Charleston, West Virginia, specifically in the Triangle District. We stayed at 4 different addresses. We started at 603 Court Street. Then we moved to 603 Summer Street. So actually when Court Street was being torn down, my mother actually was renting out that particular house. And we stayed at 603 Summer Street. And I still went to Court Street because my mother had 3 businesses there at a time when African-American women were really not the focal point as far as business was concerned. It was male-dominated. And she started out selling food out of her back door on Court Street and then moved on to having a restaurant called I&B Lunch, which stood for Isabel, my sister, and the B for Bobby, which was my nickname. And then she had a club, and it was a licensed club. There were a lot of clubs. The clubs had to be licensed. Most of the bars were not licensed. They're the ones that were in the red light district. And she had a licensed club. She had the restaurant, and attached to the building was 6 rooms upstairs that she rented out for rooms. And I don't know how she did all this because I was a child. But anyway, Court Street was my playground at the time, being a kid and someone staying close to you. She carried me from home to the restaurant where I was so busy into the grown folks' business. You know, at the time when you were told to sit over there, keep your mouth shut, and stay out of grown folks' business. I kept my mouth shut, but I kept my eyes in grown folks' business. And I was always going somewhere, you know, and the people loved my mother and they loved me, so they felt very comfortable with little Bobby around. So little Bobby was in people's bars, walking in clubs, going in restaurants, did everything, sitting on people's porches, wasn't supposed to be there. What are you doing out here, boy? I'm just sitting here eating my popsicle. And I'll tell you something. The Triangle District itself was economically viable. I don't know what people are telling you, but the Triangle District was economically viable. It was an economical hub. I call the Triangle District the Queen of the City. And the reason why I call it the Queen of the City is because if you think about it, CURE, which was Charleston Urban Renewal Authority, and the City of Charleston, and the State Highways Department, and the Governor's Office, we're going to include all of them in, they had collaborated to take the Triangle District because it was a great business district. It would enhance the future of Charleston. And that is where the Charleston Town Center came from, and some of the other business entities that's in the no longer Triangle District, but in the city of Charleston now. Oh, it was it's hard to describe in the words. It's something you'd have to feel. First of all, you gotta remember this. It was a hub for entertainment. It was a place at the time where they had the Charleston Civic Center, Municipal Auditorium. They also had the Lee Street Armory. The Lee Street Armory was totally different than the Charleston Civic Center and the Municipal Auditorium. This is where some of the original music bands came. The Barkays, the Ohio Players. I even saw, and I used to be a band boy. I'd carry the instruments in so I could get in free. Clarence Carter, remember Clarence Carter? A lot of these people came. James Brown didn't come there. He came to Civic Center. He was big time. Civic Center. When you're talking about Aretha, them, they were Civic Center boys. Now, the other ones, when you got to the other layer, now a lot of people talk about Jackie Wilson, them, they weren't really the caliber at the time of James them, so they went to Municipal Auditorium. So you had these new era bands, which were Myra, Barkays, Confunction. You remember them? Ohio Players, Free to Pain. I get excited, so it's not going. A lot of these groups came, and so it was a constant. Like she said, it was always something going on every week in Charleston. Every week you could go to the Civic Center, you could go to Municipal Auditorium, you could go to the Lee Street Armory. But also remember, you also had these bars or I won't say bars. You had these clubs that sponsored people to come in, like Jimmy Smith would come in, and Winston Marsalis. You had Mr. Tyson, who worked for Coca-Cola at the time, who was a great organist. And he worked with Jimmy Smith and these people, and they would bring these artists in. So you would see people that you normally didn't see. And then we had a barbershop called the House of Styles, where this gentleman worked. He came from Detroit, and he was the barber to the stars. So when the Temptations came in, they came to get their hair cut. Stevie Wonder came, got his hair. Remember, Stevie Wonder had hair. Yes, he got his hair done. So a lot of these stars, I can't think of his name. Little Milton. So we saw a lot of stars who came in to do things, and they would come out on Downing Street Playground and do things with the kids. So we had a chance to talk to them, to learn some things, and to really just interact with them. So also you got to remember, you had 3 playgrounds. You had Downing Street, you had Bain Street Playground. Where was it located? It was located in Uptown. Right, I tell you it was right there where Charleston Cut Flower, and right now it's Conoy Valley Ambulance Service. You know where that is, Conoy Valley Ambulance Service? Directly across the street where Power Park is, parts of Power Park, actually the ball field section, it's the ball field section? Yeah, part of the ball field sets on Bain Street Playground. And then one time I got to be the playground director. Thank you. And that was also where the first senior feeding station was. And the first station where they were remember they used to give meals to the kids? They bring meals out on the playground to feed the children in the summertime. Well, I was a part of the first feeding station, so we fed the kids, and then mistakenly started giving things to the seniors. So the city of Charleston said it was okay, and they started a senior feeding program. And it was located, believe it or not, at the time, the feeding station started where Martin Luther King Center was, in a sense. It was located in a building, and then once they built the Martin Luther King Center, they moved it there. So the Martin Luther King Center is actually, all your rec centers are a extension from the playgrounds. Martin Luther King Center is extension from Donnelly Street. Even Conoy City rec centers from Conoy City playgrounds. And I worked at all 9 of the playgrounds under Drew Summers. So there was so much to do. And when you talk about Donnelly Street and the pool, the activities were non-ending. They had pool parties. People would come from everywhere. They'd come from South Hills, and they would come down to visit us, play ball, swim with us. So there was a lot of interaction during my generation that wasn't there during the earlier generation, a generation with whites, blacks, and other youth. But in our neighborhood, people don't realize there were Greeks, there were Italians, there was blacks and whites. I stayed on Summer Street, 63 Summer Street. Family next door to me were Greek. And the family on the other side, which were the Watsons, they were black. And the street was littered with whites and blacks and Italians. Then beside it was the DuPont Hotel on the lower end of Summer Street. There was a hotel called the DuPont Hotel, which I'd run up and down. I won't get into that. And I met a lot of people. But for a young person, it was different than anything else because there were so many kids to interact with. So many activities that people would do. We had block parties. And they would block off the streets on Court Street, and we would have a block party. They would block off Donnelly Street in the summertime, and they would put this, it was a water tube. If you ever seen a water tube, you put up and it shoots water up, and we would just run through all day long. Then when they had political things, they would have give out free hot dogs and free things, and the ice cream truck would come and give out free ice cream. And the churches was the focal point. That was the ones who gave the picnic, summer picnic. Like she said, the vacation Bible school, hay rides. I don't know if you ever been on the hay ride. They did the hay ride for us. Matter of fact, Metropolitan, they did a hay ride. And every summer we'd all get on the back of the wagon and ride up to Coonskin Park, and we'd ride around for a minute, and then we'd come back, and they would go up City Park, and we would sit there, and they would do the marshmallows, and we would sing hymns, and the church was so wonderful then. You know, they're the ones who gave the Christmas parties, the community Christmas parties, the Easter parties. And First Baptist Church, they always did sporting events. Reverend Newsom was great. He'd open up the church, we'd go in and we'd play ball. And he'd have a league. We have a league there. So the church was so important, and that was where all the kids would gather. That's where the adults would gather. And it was different because we had so many children. And the Triangle District was divided into two sections. People don't know you had uptown and downtown. Downtown ran all the way up until you got to where Garnet is. Now, when you got, listen, this is something. When you got on the other side of the back part of Garnet, that was uptown. There wasn't no marker. That was it. We would go from downtown to uptown, but our focal point was Mr. Robert Easley, if you remember him, senior. He was a Charleston police officer. Him and Sergeant Fry. Well, Mr. Easley and Mr. Fry, Sergeant Fry, they went to the police chief, and they wanted to start Youth at Risk. And they had the canteen, which was located right next to Doc Saul's. Doc's, yeah, I know you heard of Doc. Ooh, it was located on the block, on Shrewsbury, right on the block. And I mean, you remember Happy Days? It was just like Happy Days. It had the booth, the different colored cloth. You go in, you put a quarter in, you put a nickel in, and you play one record. A quarter played $5, and he was a soda jerk. The hat, the whole outfit. He made the banana splits, the hot dogs would blow your mind. The bologna sandwiches was something else, and the root beer floats was amazing. So it was always something to go. There was, if you went further up on Morris Street at the end where City Park was, Mr. Morris had a store there. Candy store. There was White's Paradise, like she said. I remember that. There was Charlie Page's. There was Miss B who had a store there. So it was always a focal point for candy, sweets, ice cream, and kids. Think about that. Candy, sweets, ice cream, kids. It was always something to do. And believe it or not, the Triangle District was our playground. We played in the streets. People respected us. We respected the cars. People would come out, bring lemonade. Okay, kids, here's some lemonade. It's hot out here. They give you lemonade. They give you peanut butter sandwiches. And people are always giving you something to eat or drink if you visit someone. Like I would come and see you, and your mom would say, had you had breakfast yet? I said, no, ma'am, I haven't eaten anything yet. Sit down, boy. I said, but my mother has a restaurant. I don't care. We're having pancakes, you're having pancakes. They having oatmeal, you had oatmeal. They had eggs and bacon, you had eggs and bacon. They had grits, you had grits. And I loved the sharing that they did. And the respect was there. And being a child growing up is different than today. The love, that one word, love. Caring, the nurturing, and the love was there. Everybody watched out for everybody. You were no longer her child. You were in her custody. Now you were her child. So you took that whipping just like he took that whipping. If you did something wrong, it wasn't nothing with somebody to come out of their home and come right over and say, are you cursing? No, sir. Yes, you were. I heard you. And take the little belt off. Give you 5 or 6 licks. You stood there. You took it. And the kids would laugh. And the fun part of it was after you were chastised, you weren't beaten down. You were loved. So maybe the ice cream truck came. And that same gentleman who spanked you, corrected you, would pay for ice cream for all those kids and give you a hug. Now you tell me that ain't love. Yeah, it hits hard. It still hits hard. I can remember coming home from school, and my mother was a little, how you put it, distraught, distressed, or whatever. And she was saying that they're going to tear down my restaurant, my businesses. That was her main thing. She wasn't concerned about money. She wasn't concerned about anything. She was concerned about them tearing down her businesses, and she would have to leave the community. But we were a little different because of her energy, and I'll be honest, my mother's energy, that we didn't actually live there when they were tearing it down, but we went through the process and the stress because of the businesses that she had, and that was her only income at the time, other than the house, another house that she had at 1506 Red Oak Street. But she ended up, tell you the truth, she ended up losing everything. Eventually, she had to sell that house because of, they wanted to take that land. When they took, people don't realize, when they took the Triangle District, they didn't take certain sections and leave certain sections. They took basically everything that was a dwelling. They didn't leave any dwellings. And the few businesses that stood, they had to be major businesses. If they were minority owned, African American owned is what I mean, then most of the time they were dispelled. That's a nice word. I'm trying to use good language here. They condemned them and then they were destroyed. Being a relative of Burley's, and my father also was a member of that Triangle Improvement Council. The gentleman, like she said, all the men that were involved, they would meet and get together. And I watched my father make signs. They made signs and they planned strategies. And they did use the kids. Now, no, I don't want people to realize this. The children were active as far as being involved. They weren't true activists, the same as some of the adults, but we were active as far as holding signs. We didn't speak our piece, but we stood in front of the police. Yes, we did, and we tried to stop bulldozers. And they thought that the children would be the ones that they would respect and reverse this, but they didn't. It didn't work. It was something that you'd have to see. If you've ever seen anyone being forced, that means they're coming down the street. The police and the bulldozers are coming. They're coming. And they are very serious about what they're doing. And they don't stop. So they just come at burrow right through you. Bulldozers don't stop. Police just spread you apart. Don't matter, and they just start tearing down everything. There was people who lost everything. They didn't just lose their house. They lost their furnishing. They didn't have time to get their belongings out. So a lot of people just got a few belongings out. They lost their history. We talking pictures. We talking family histories. It was the most heartbreaking thing that you ever want to see. People were in tears. There were people in tears. Actually, what it did was, I'll be honest with you, it totally destroyed the black psyche. We never recovered. Even today, there's no recovery from that. There's people still affected by that mentally. There's people affected by that. You can't displace people and they're not affected physically. I mean, forcefully. You can't force people out of their homes and think they're going to be okay. Yeah, they may look okay, but it caused people to get on drugs. It caused people to use more alcohol. It caused some suicides. There was people who the Elk River is full of people who committed suicide, who jumped in the river. There's people who committed suicide by gunshot, overdose. It affected people in a lot of ways. It was people who that was their world, that was their life, they had no one else, so they ended up being alone. And that solitude, you can imagine what total solitude does to a person. So I see people now, even on this west side, that's been displaced, and they're not mentally stable. They're broken. I'm using myself as an example. I'm bitter. I have a hidden anger. I feel lost, distraught, displaced. It's times I can be driven to tears when I think about how it affected my life and my family. I actually think that it contributed to the death of my mother. She just grieved so much. And, with the loss of my sister, it just was compounded. It was too much. I watched people's health go down, lose everything. But for me, I'll be honest with you, I fight this fight for one reason. And I'll tell you why I fight it. I don't want people to forget. Oh, it's gone. But I'm not going to let it be forgotten. And I know sometimes I'm angry. I do apologize. I can be very angry, very bitter, very hard-cased about this triangle. And I've given the city. I've made a lot of enemies possibly because I'm pushing this triangle down people's throat. Because it means so much to me. You gotta remember, this is my history. This is my life. And everything that I'm doing even right now, I'm doing it because of the things I've learned from the people that lived in. I learned to fight from them. They taught me to fight. I watched them fight. I can remember when there was no African Americans in the water company and the gas company. They used us kids to go down and hold signs up. Because they knew that they was not going to stick the dogs on us. They wasn't going to hit us with them hoses, but they sure did put them dogs on them. So I learned to fight for my triangle from watching the adults. I learned to fight from the west side from living in the triangle. I'm bitter. I'm angry. You know this. This is my heart. This is my baby. Unless this is your church, like your church, this is your baby. This is your baby. This is my baby. And everything I do, even now, even for the West Side, it's for my mother, it's for my father, and it's for the people of the Triangle District. Because somewhere, these people have to be remembered. I don't think people realize that one time this town almost had 100,000 people in it. Close to that. I know 70,000. Can you imagine the thousands of people who left here displaced because of the triangle and never came back, not even to visit? And I'll be honest with you, there's times when I catch the bus, I go out on the triangle out there, and I walk around. I like to stand on Court Street. I like to go and stand where I go to the farmer's market and tell them I played here. Farmer's market there was nothing there. It was a place where the railroad cars came in and they unloaded the wonderful fruit for us kids to go and eat and eat. We go in them boxcars and tear them grapes, peaches, pears, bananas up. And they let us. So they said, oh, come on, kids. Okay, I'm going to give you something now. Don't sneak back here. Well, no, you know what kids will do. Boy, them grapes were awful good. I'm going to go back and get me some of them Concord grapes. And you got to realize this, that the Triangle District, like I say, the whole Triangle District was my playground. The whole Triangle District was my playground. I'd go into Sunbeam Bakery. Can you imagine a kid going to Sunbeam Bakery? And I'm watching the pans of bread come down. I'm just staring. And they always feel sorry for kids. I knew that. I know how to play that role, that sad-eye role. Boy, you look like you want some bread. Yes, sir, I would like to have some bread. Now, my mother owns a restaurant. Am I hungry? No. But that's you don't know the smells that came from the different cooks cooking, the Italian food coming from Fazio, the bread coming from there, the fish market down the street on Summer Street. They fried your fish fresh, so you smell the fish, the restaurants. Oh man, it's just amazing, the foods that were available, that were out there, the different smells. Then like she said, there was the fruit man coming by. So he cut a watermelon up. You get you some watermelon, give out free peaches, ice cream truck. Can you imagine that was a playground. And then Miss Watson cooking those fried apple pies. I know where to go. Mr. Preston, them wonderful pears and plum trees. I talk to him every day so I can get me some free plums. I know how to play people. So I'm saying, I love the Triangle District. I love it now. I love it so much right now till nothing comes before the Triangle District to me. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the West Side because I live here. I'm a resident here. I'll fight for this West Side. I'll do everything for it. But it won't take the place of my Triangle District. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure it's not forgiven. I tip my hat to you because I was almost in tears the last time. I ain't gonna tell you, it meant so much to me to see this story come. The goodness of the Triangle District. Everybody talks about the red light district. The Triangle District was more than that. It was more than Court Street. It was a place where they had everything that you ever could want in a place. Churches, schools, businesses. What place has all the movie theaters? We had our own movie theater, Ferguson. Then we could still go to the Curious, the Capitol, the Virginian, the Lyric. I mean, you had everything. I mean, there was everything at our fingertips. Everything was there. And then the place was self-sufficient. So we had our own seamsters, our doctors, our lawyers, dentists. Think about it. Restaurants. We had everything. I mean, it was a what you call it, a city inside of a city. It was a city. That's why I call it the queen of the city. The Triangle District was the queen of the city. And the reason why I say it is because it was the future of Charleston. And they knew it was the future of Charleston. And they took it from us because they knew it was prime territory. And the future was right there. Think about it. Look at the location. It's the center of Charleston. That's the center. Look where that Charleston Town Center is. That Charleston Town Center is set on property that I used to go. That was a big lot. Right off of Bibby Street, Clendenin. We go right there and play all the. That was where we played our Sandlock football. That was where I go see my friends at. Like she said, the Harrises stayed over there. The Joneses, the Smiths. I'd go over there. And and like I said, all I had was a sister, so I didn't have a playmate, and she was older than me. So everybody else was my playmate. Everybody else's child. So that's why I was everywhere and everything. The Triangle District, gone but not forgotten. And the reason why is this: the history. The Triangle's mystery is actually its history. And what you don't know is this: so many feet, so many hands built the Triangle and made it what it is today. There's more celebrities, famous people, and just local celebrities and people that are infamous to us locally and people that were the foundation of this city actually came from that Triangle District, lived in that Triangle District. Now they live in other parts. So the Triangle District will never be forgotten. It's gone, but it'll never be forgotten. Triangle District, queen of the city.